Welcome back to the United Mates Football Podcast. Today I am joined virtually in Los Angeles, California, all the way from our hometown of London by my co-host Joe. And as usual, we have a special guest for today's show as well. He's an editor, social media producer and presenter with a special focus on football in the northeast of England. He's also a fellow podcaster too. He currently works on the Northeast Football app, which provides news about all things Sunderland, Middlesbrough, and his personally beloved Newcastle United. We welcome Matthew Ketchell to the United Mates Football Podcast. Ketch, it's a pleasure to have you as our guest. And how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, I'm all good. Thanks, lads. Thanks very much for the invite.
Pleasure's all ours. Looking forward to chatting about Newcastle and some of the work that you're up to these days as well. Joe, we are recording this podcast on Tuesday, the 18th. Yesterday, the news broke, presumably not on the Northeast Football app, though, because it was concerning a London club, that Harry Kane has expressed his desire to leave Tottenham. Is this the Spurs apocalypse, Joe? How are you doing, and what's your take on things?
Oh, I'm not doing well, Kai. I'm very, very upset. But can you blame him for wanting to leave? I mean, I don't. He's been my favourite Tottenham player of all time. It's very sad. It feels like we're in for a messy summer, a sort of Kane versus Levy battle, which no one really wants to see, to be honest. But we're all going to witness it. We'll see what happens with that. But Ketch, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. And we start every episode with an icebreaker question for our guest. So normally when we ask this icebreaker question to our guests, we look at their Twitter account and try and find something you might have said recently to then ask you a question. But we're going to do something a bit different today. Today, we're going to stray no further than your name. So,
okay,
taking Ketch up off the table, both figuratively and literally, today's icebreaker is, and we're going to give you a bit of time to answer this, but it's what is your favourite condiment or spread? I'll start by saying mine, and I think recently I've become a big fan of sriracha sauce. I know that's been quite trendy over the last year or two. I'm a big fan of that. I'll give you a bit more time to mull it over. Kai, do you have a favourite condiment or spread?
Yeah, you've caught me at a very relevant time because recently I've developed a bit of a Vegemite habit. I've been having that every morning for breakfast. It's Vegemite on a bagel and then a banana and orange juice. That's what gets me through my morning. So I suppose listeners, for those of you who don't know what Vegemite is, it's very similar to Marmite, but it's Australian. And in my opinion, it's better. And beyond that, I actually did some Googling, and apparently 2022 will be the 100th anniversary of the invention of Vegemite. So I would stick that in your calendars if you haven't already. And then if you don't know what I suppose Marmite is for that reference, there's not really a great way for me to describe either of them, Vegemite or Marmite, that's going to make them sound good. But trust me, they are elite spreads. Joe, are you a, love it or hate it when it comes to Marmite type of guy?
Yeah, definitely a love it person. Although I'm disappointed that you've strayed over to Vegemite from Marmite. Obviously, there's a bit of a British-Australian rivalry there. But no, it's a good choice. Ketch, you've had some time to think now. What are you going to go for?
Well, I do like sriracha, and I love that on a burrito. I do like a burrito. Had one on Sunday from a local Mexican restaurant on the North Shields Fish Quay, where I've nearby to where I've recently moved. I don't mind a bit of red onion chutney on a bit of cheddar and a cracker. But you know what? Ketchup is the one that gets used the most. Bacon sarnie. I like a bacon and sausage sarnie. I'll go double pig. Sorry, any vegetarians listening. Ketchup is the classic, and my name sounds like it, so I'm gonna go boring red sauce. But I'm not like averse to brown sauce either. I'll take on brown sauce if that's all that's there. I'll have that. I'm not wedded to red sauce, but red sauce is my go-to condiment. It's the one I use the most in my life, so it would be rude of me not to say ketchup.
Just bring on all the sauces. Where would life be without sauce? Usually kind of the highlight of a sandwich in particular, I suppose. But on from our favorite condiments to your favorite club, Ketch. And how did the Newcastle fandom come about? What is your Magpies supporter origin story, so to speak?
Well, I went to my first game when I was 7, March 1993. The game was Newcastle v Brentford. It was at the crescendo of Keegan's promotion season. 92-93. He famously saved us from relegation to the third tier the year before, and then gone on an amazing run the following season, signed Andy Cole, and produced this amazing attacking, way better than them football that just took the league by storm. So by March, the club were flying. They were top of the league. And the game, Brentford, was interesting for a couple of reasons. I think Chris Hughton was playing for Brentford at fullback, and he would go on to manage Newcastle. I remember things like Kevin Scott scored an own goal with a diving header. And the game is most famously remembered for an incident that I have no recollection of. Maybe I nipped out to the toilet. But Rob Lee scored from the halfway line, and it was disallowed for a pathetic offside. It was someone trotting back completely. In the VAR age, it wouldn't have even been considered. A Newcastle player trotting back into their own half. Rob Lee scored from the halfway line, and it was disallowed. But Newcastle won 5-1. And ever since then, it was just head over heels in love with Kev, basically, because we were right into the entertainers era. Promotion, beat Leicester 7-1 on the final day of the season, straight into the Asics, fantastic Asics kit. I was a young goalkeeper at the time, and I've got a little shirt over my shoulder there that you might recognize from that period. They brought out 3 amazing Asics goalkeeper kits. And Keegan went famously, his program notes on the first day of the Premier League season were, "We're coming for your title, Sir Alex. We want to come up and try and win the league." And which promoted manager ever says that? Ever. It's insane. But he was right. We finished third, straight into Europe, and it just kept getting better and better and better. And by 1996, I'm 11 years old, and we're breaking the transfer record, signing Alan Shearer. So I had the most unbelievable start to supporting a football club. Newcastle were the best club in the country, the most exciting, and everyone's second club. And they were on my doorstep. I was from Whitley Bay on the coast of Newcastle. So it was a dream start, and it's been pretty much downhill ever since. And I wonder if I'll ever see a squad or manager as good and exciting as Keegan and his entertainers.
Well, we might get into that, yeah. But as you mentioned, what a time to start supporting the Magpies. And interesting to hear about that Chris Hughton link. I guess the tenuous Brentford Newcastle link at this point is Ivan Toney, who we'll see if he's on his way back to the Premier League with Brentford or with maybe another club. You'd think someone's going to snap him up one way or another. But otherwise, I mentioned the Northeast Football app earlier, which you're editor of. And clearly there's a sense of pride that goes along with being a supporter from that region. So in your opinion, what is it that's so particularly sacred about football in the northeast of England?
Good question. I don't know if you can put your finger on it, but there was a famous journalist from the mid-early 20th century, shall we call it, I think he's called Arthur Appleton. He wrote a book called The Hotbed of Soccer, which is all about the Northeast and how fantastic and passionate everyone has become about football at that stage of its origin. It was probably only about 50 years old, the game, when he wrote that book. And he described the Northeast as just this place where the football was all that mattered, and it was all that anyone thought about. And in a way, Keegan ran with that when he took over, and his team talks to the team at the time were always, these supporters have worked hard all week. All they've spoke about in the factories, in their offices, in their places of work is the football. They want to come here. They've paid good money. They want to be entertained. And it really is something that people will talk about all day, every day. If you come up to Newcastle, you'll see people walking around wearing the shirts. I've got one on now. To be honest, I don't wear it very often, but a Newcastle shirt, especially back in the 90s when I was a fan, was considered genuine going out gear. You could wear that out down the town. And if you look at opening days back in the 90s and early 2000s, everyone was wearing black and white. And I think it's because it's a big, massive area, the Northeast. And there's basically 3 main clubs there, Newcastle, Middlesbrough and Sunderland, and a lot of people and a lot of space. So it's all concentrated. If you go down to the Midlands, there's about 20 clubs there that you're within a 20-mile drive from. London is the same, obviously. Even, on the South Coast and Sussex and Manchester, the Northwest, there's clubs everywhere you look. In the Northeast, there's 3 main clubs, and neither of them are particularly prolific at winning or, challenging for trophies or being in Europe. Newcastle are the only ones who've really, in recent memory, although Middlesbrough got to a final, have really done that. So it's all concentrated, basically. And everyone just loves football. So Newcastle as well, the stadium is the heartbeat of the city. It sits right in the centre of town. You can finish your pint within 10 minutes of kickoff and be in your seat. You don't have to trek or get a train or a tube. It's it really is the heartbeat of the city, and it looks over down to the Tyne Bridge and the cathedral and very dramatic Colosseum-like stadium. And it really is, when Newcastle are playing well, you do feel the beat in the city. People have a skip in their step. And those days in the 90s and in the early 2000s under Sir Bobby, the mood of the city was really great. And to be honest, it's been really tough for the last 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, people are really struggling. I think Newcastle gets a bad rep for certain things. It's a bit of an economic outpost, and not to get too deep, but like politically, it's a region that can be neglected by governments. Maybe that wasn't the case in the 90s, but recently I think it's certainly been the case. So there's a bit of us and them about it. And football's so tribal, there is a north-south divide, but I don't know, maybe that lays into it as well. If you come up to the northeast, there's an element of pride that we're representing our region, and that's even more exaggerated by the fact that we're a little bit harder to get to. It's a little bit colder. We're a little bit harder to understand. But one thing I will say, having just moved from London back to the northeast, where I'm originally from, to take up this new job, the people up here are so much more friendly, and it's my mental health and happiness have gone through the roof just being around people who are happy and want to get on, and that's what the northeast is all about. So, bit of a long rambling answer to that one. It was a big question, and hopefully I've given you a flavour for what I think makes the northeast tick football wise.
Yeah, I think most certainly, and I think us Londoners are a miserable bunch, unfortunately, especially us Tottenham and Arsenal fans, as Kaito and I very much know at the moment. But obviously we've spoken a bit, Ketch, about the Northeast Football app, but prior to that, I know you worked for the Match of the Day magazine as well. And look, I have fond memories of when I was younger reading Match magazine, Shoot magazine. I'm sure Kai does as well, as did most people our age when you're younger. I guess I was just interested, given that football magazines have always been an iconic part of following a team, especially from a younger age. In today's world, where there's so much content, even for the younger football fan, are they still as important in 2021 as they perhaps were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Well, here's the interesting thing about that. When I worked at Match of the Day magazine, we obviously would interact a lot with the readers. They would write to us, and we would go out as well and do a lot of market research and do workshops in local schools. And we had a big affiliation with Topps Match Attacks, who do the collectible cards and stickers. And they had a big swap tour. I don't know if you ever did it back in the day, where you would do a sticker book and you would try and complete your book by going to a big kind of conference of other sticker collectors and complete your books. And we would go on that and have a little stand at Match of the Day, and you would get to speak to a lot of the readers there, and it was really interesting. So the thing with Match of the Day readers and the thing with young supporters are these days is they can watch all types of football. They can watch La Liga, they can watch MLS, they can watch Bundesliga. They have access to it all. They can go on YouTube and pull up Messi's old games, etc., etc. And you would ask a young reader, who do you support? And they would always have two teams. So they would have an English team, normally the team that they support, and then they would either support Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus, basically wherever Ronaldo or Messi were, that is who they would support. So they all had two teams. So that was not the case when I was younger. I was a one club man. But these guys, they're allowed to have two teams, provided they're not in the same league. So you would get big Brighton fans, but they're just wearing Barcelona kit because they love Messi. And to the point where young readers were switching allegiance immediately from Real Madrid to Juventus when Ronaldo moved. Because if you think about that guy, he is a complete and utter freak of nature, superhero to them. Where he goes, they go. They want to watch him. They want to be near him. Mbappe, the same. A huge player for the young fans. So it was kind of player based, PSG's, Juve, Real Madrid, but then they would have a degree of loyalty to their local team. So definitely change, and I think that's due to access to content.
Yeah, the content access is crazy now, and yeah, it's interesting how the evolution of the young football fan. It's interesting, but it's good you mentioned those kind of conventions where you could go and swap stickers, which I went to when I was younger. But kind of leads me on to my next question about your own podcast, Searching for Shinies, the 90s football podcast. So it's a really fantastic concept where you and your co-host Richie track down and interview players from the 1997 Merlin Premier League sticker book. So Kai and I used to get the sticker books. I think the first one I ever had was the 1999 one, so that was a bit before me. But yeah, we very much approve the podcast. But we'd love to hear from you. How did a Merlin sticker book from the 90s sort of become the inspiration for a podcast?
Well, I take full credit for this. Richie, my podcast co-host, will say it was his idea. But basically, post-COVID, I was actually made redundant from Match of the Day magazine. My role was made redundant. And it wasn't the end of the world. And I'd been there for 6 years and I'd done it all. And I was kind of looking for something new anyway. So I took it as a positive and blessing in disguise. And then I was looking for what I wanted to do next. And a lot of people were saying to me, you've got to start your own podcast. You've got to do this and that. And I was like, yeah, I do actually. I love football podcasts. And Richie, my uni mate, Richie Wyatt, who I used to go to uni with back in the day, he said, you've got to start your own podcast. I went, well, start one with me. And we both had a love for the podcasts that interview old players. So I know you had Warren Barton on your podcast. Love hearing from old players. We really like Quickly Kevin, they get a lot of players from the 90s on. And Under the Cosh as well. Love the interview style of their presenters, where they want to get all the classic banter and stories, drinking stuff, real warts and all tales. And we wanted to do something like that. And we were like, well, let's give it a theme. So we were coming up with ideas, and I was like, we need to be like collecting and players. And so what if we just sort of collect players like we're collecting stickers like we did back in the day? So it was definitely my idea. And then Richie actually had access to a few albums. I didn't have any. They were back in Newcastle at the time, but Richie got a few albums out. And he was like, why don't we do the 97 sticker album? He was reeling off some of the names in there. And I was like, that's fantastic. So basically, the premise is we go through the book. If there's any player who had a sticker in there, we try and track them down and interview them. And we've done about a dozen interviews now, all from different clubs so far. So you could say we're 8 away from completing the one from every club goal. We haven't had any players who had shiny stickers yet, because they were the most coveted. So we haven't had any actual shinies yet, but we've had some fantastic guests so far. We've had, here we go, Steve Ketchell, Ian Hart, Neil Sullivan, Craig Hignett. It was a double episode because Richie's a Borough fan. Keith Gillespie, we had on recently. His second part is coming out soon, which was fantastic for me to speak to a real life entertainer who I used to watch when I was a kid. And we just ask them about their career, and we hone in on the 1996-97 season when we can, because we think this is the sweet spot of British football post Euro 96. The Premier League the money was just starting to kick in, and Lee Dixon was one of our interviewees, and he had a good bit where we asked him, at what point did you stop drinking cans on the way back from away games? And he basically pinpointed the 96-97 season, which was when Arsene Wenger came in and took over. And I think we've actually found the sweet spot where players were still drinking heavily through the week and after games, but still performing to a high level live on Sky Sports with all the glitz and glamour, and starting to get the big money. And your Burkamps were coming over, and Zola and Tino Asprilla. And we just love that era. And we're collecting interviews like stickers, and the players have been fantastic with their time. We've been doing 2-3 hour interviews with these guys. Keith Gillespie went over 3 hours. It's just amazing. They've got so many stories. It was a fantastic era, and it's been a joy. And I'd love if any of your listeners could give us a go.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I mean, as you know, Ketch, we love speaking to former players too. So I think there's a lot of synergy here for listeners of our podcasts and your podcast. But we've got a game for you now, and it's called Who Are Ya? It's a game we often play on the podcast, and essentially we're going to be guessing mystery Newcastle footballers. I will give you one clue. You and Keitel will try and work out who I'm talking about. The clues are very vague, so just ask as many questions as you want, and then hopefully we'll find the mystery player. And they're all Newcastle United players. So the first clue I've got for you is that this player has played in every tier of the Football League.
Is it? I want to just throw a name out already, but Dwight Gale?
I mean, it might be right, but no, it's not him on this occasion, I'm afraid. Not who I was thinking of anyway.
Before I have another guess, I just want to say, I think that you can't really trump the sticker concept, but as you were talking about that, I was thinking, I liked Power Pods, and then I was like, oh, pods. kind of instantly lends itself to a podcast name if someone were to go out there and do a power pod not that anyone should steal your idea. Yeah, the power pod or something like that. But anyway, now that I've distracted us, who is this mystery player? Does he still play for Newcastle?
No, he doesn't. He still plays in the Football League, but not for Newcastle.
Is he a goalkeeper?
He's not. No, he's. I'd mainly say he's a defender. That certainly when he was at Newcastle, he was a defender.
And he played for Newcastle in the Premier League?
Yep, he played for Newcastle in the Premier League for 3 seasons at the start of, I guess, whatever decade we just had, the teens or whatever, the early teens. He was.
Oh, okay. Is he a centre-back?
Centre-back, full-back. He was quite versatile, I'd say. He's been known to play in midfield later in his career.
Ooh.
God.
Did he play for Forest?
He started his career at Forest. I wonder if you're onto something.
Is it James Perch?
Yeah.
I would have had him as a midfielder, but I was thinking Perchy, but yeah, fair play. Good one, Keitel.
Yeah, no, he's played in every tier of English football, currently playing for his hometown club, Mansfield Town. So yeah, that's James Perch for you. I've now got another player, and this player has scored for both Newcastle and Real Madrid, and his name isn't Michael Owen, I should probably say as well.
Newcastle and Real Madrid. Okay, is he a defender?
He's a striker.
Okay.
I was going to say, I feel like Jonathan Woodgate might have got an own goal at some point, but he's not.
Yeah, he did. I'll give you another clue. I wouldn't focus too much on the Real Madrid part. Maybe think more national.
Is
it Santiago Muñoz?
Oh, I suppose he is technically. Yeah. That would be correct in a fictional sense. Yeah.
Can I? Yeah. Do you know the street I've moved to in North Shields, Cullercoats, is the street that Santiago moved to when he came over from LA and moved in with Glenn Foy. So there's my goal connection for you.
Lovely.
I like to get that one in.
That is a great connection.
Can I have a stab at this? I'm going to throw a name in here. Joselu.
Oh, you've got it, Ketch.
Yes.
Yeah, Joselu. Yeah, he. I didn't know he played for Madrid, but apparently 1 appearance, 1 goal. Fair enough.
Prolific.
Yeah, and he scored a few goals for Newcastle. Not the best striker ever, but he contributed. What did you make of Joselu in his time at the Toon?
Well, he was. Rafa just had a fantastic way of wringing the most out of his transfer budget and who was available and how much money he had. No money. I think Joselu, he cost less than 5 million, and that was the best possible player he could have bought to suit our system within the wage bill. Personality wise, he was ticked all the boxes and he was fine for us, and he's actually doing really well in La Liga. I think he's in double figures for his goals almost, so he's pulling up trees still, and maybe we could have done with hanging on to him and having him as a backup for Callum Wilson, because there's no one else really currently at the club who can score.
Yeah, I suppose it was a nice springboard, Newcastle, for Joselu. Otherwise, there's been a couple others like Cisco and Luke, who it didn't necessarily work out for as much.
Much more expensive as well, both of them.
Well, I've got one more player which we'll quickly go with. My clue for this player is he is currently playing in Malta.
Is he English?
He's certainly not, no.
Definitely not English. Okay, which manager did he play under in Newcastle?
That is a very good question, and I believe the answer to that is Rafa Benitez.
Okay.
Is he an attacking player or a defensive player?
He's a striker.
A striker.
His time at Newcastle was fleeting. I should add.
It's not Rondon, is it?
No, but he had a similar, I'd say, reputation when he came to Newcastle. He'd had a good reputation abroad, and it just didn't work out for him at Newcastle.
Mm-hmm. Is he European?
Nope, he's African.
Oh, is it? Well,
Doumbia.
Seydou Doumbia.
Is he? Correct. No, you've thrown me there because I think he was McLaren.
Oh, was he? Oh,
I think he was McLaren.
Yeah, it was 2016. I didn't know if Rafa maybe came a bit later in the season.
It's not. We would have come. Yeah, it's not a Rafa signing, but he would have been there when Rafa arrived.
Yeah.
Try and save the day.
That is my bad. But Seydou Doumbia, is playing for the Hamrun Spartans at the moment.
How's he getting on?
He's scored 4 goals in 6 games, so pretty good. Yeah.
Fair play.
Yeah, he's doing all right. But there we go. Yes, Seydou Doumbia had a little spell at Newcastle, believe it or not.
Seydou Doumbia, one of those players who was always quality on FIFA, I think, especially during his time at CSK Moscow. A lot of pace.
That's why McLaren signed him, Had him in his ultimate team.
Yeah, ultimate team, exactly. One of the legendary ultimate team players. But on to, well, your ultimate team, I suppose, in your eyes, Newcastle still. And we're going to chat a bit more in depth about current affairs. And to segue from, the game that we just played, you'll often hear chants of, "Who are you?" at grounds up and down the country. Well, you will when they're full of fans again. But somebody who's probably had less family-friendly chants aimed at him during his tenure at Newcastle United is club owner Mike Ashley, who bought the club back in 2007. And since then, there have been some ups, largely made possible by the catastrophic downs that the club have encountered, such as 2 relegations. Talks of a Saudi takeover have resurfaced more recently after collapsing at the end of last season. So Ketch, on the job that Mike Ashley's done and the potential sale of the club, do Newcastle United supporters need to be careful what they wish for, or would anything but Ashley be a massive improvement in your eyes?
Yeah, I don't think it can get much worse than Mike Ashley, to be honest with you. So that's where the fans are coming from. It's really as simple as that. It's been a disaster for him. Basically, he should look at what Leicester did at the weekend and winning the FA Cup and really weep, because their owner was, beckoned down from the royal box and embraced by all the players on the pitch. That could have been Ashley. That could have been Mike Ashley if he'd brought someone into the club when he took over in 2007 who knew what they were doing when it came to football. And actually, to be fair, he kind of did. The first chairman or managing director of Newcastle was a guy called Chris Mort, who was I think he's a sports solicitor, and he left after a year, I think just mutual consent. And he did seem to have a bit about him, sensible guy. But then Ashley's appointments after that were just, Derek Lambias, casino mogul, and Joe Kinnear coming in as manager and then coming in as director of football, which is like, you can't believe that's actually happened. And then other cronies who coming in, Dennis Wise, and people who have no grasp of even the region or the fans or the history of the club. This guy Tony Jimenez, who had a high profile role at one point, telling Kevin Keegan to look up players on YouTube. He was a steward at Chelsea. They turned down Modric and had a bit of a faux pas with Modric's agent when he came up to Newcastle for potential talks. So it's mistake after mistake with Ashley. And really look at what Leicester have done. That's an owner who's come from Asia and just completely invested and gone for it and embraced the local region and culture and done little gestures for the fans, like pay for their travel to away games and give them free drinks on a match day, a free pie. And yes, they're a selling club when their big players perform well, like Mahrez and Kante and Maguire. They go for big money, and then the money all gets piled back into the club. Whereas Ashley sells the players, your likes of Cabaye, Perez, they go for big money, and then they're replaced on the cheap. It's the whole club is being run on the cheap, which is like he does it with these sports shops. If he'd given over control to someone who knew what they were doing and spent the time to listen to fans and get a feel for the pulse of the region, he could have been on something massive. When he took over in 2007, Newcastle was worth more than Spurs, played in a bigger stadium than Spurs. Now Spurs play in £1 billion stadium and they're worth over £1 billion. And it's the same for Leicester. Leicester were in tier 3 of the Football League during Ashley's second year in Newcastle, and they've gone on to win a league and win an FA Cup, and now they're going to be challenging in the Champions League. They're probably going to qualify for the Champions League. They could do it tonight. They're playing Chelsea, so it was just mistake after mistake, and it really is at the point where fans would take anything but Ashley. The fans were telling us at Chronicle Live that they would take relegation this season if it meant Ashley selling the club. That's how strong the feeling is, because this guy doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to invest. And it's come at the worst possible time in football. If you want to be successful in football, you have to invest. You have to spend big money. And the guy's out of his depth financially. He's got a lot of money. He's a billionaire, but he can't put money in to compete with the top 10. Look at the money Everton are putting into their club. Newcastle are putting a fraction of that in. And he really needs to get out of there. And he's kind of stuck. He's wedded to this deal with Saudi. He wants to let that deal go through. If it doesn't go through, I know there's 2 court cases going through at the minute to try and push it through. If it doesn't go through, you wonder where his head's at. Is he going to be stubborn and hold out for 300 million? And I think if he does that, he's taking a huge risk, because every year that he is in charge of Newcastle, the club is a huge risk of going down. So it's a scary time, and it's a big summer for Newcastle, and a lot rests on this takeover deal.
It is a big summer for Newcastle, and what will be interesting actually is to see where Steve Bruce fits into all of it, because obviously he's just had a good month, a sort of Joe Willock, Joe Linton inspired Newcastle, been playing well. He's just got manager of the month, but I know generally since Steve Bruce has been at Newcastle, the fan feeling has been he's a bit underwhelming. The style of football isn't the greatest. It's not very exciting, but I mean, he's kept you up. Is he going to be your manager again next season? And what are your thoughts on Steve Bruce in general?
Oh, I think he's here for the long run as far as Ashley's concerned. Ashley will be delighted with him for a couple of reasons. So he's fulfilled his remit of keeping the club in the league, not overspending. He's cheap. He's the lowest paid manager in the Premier League. And he keeps his mouth shut. He gets on with it. He doesn't give Ashley or Charnley any grief. I doubt he's knocking on the door for certain transfers. Maybe put a bit of pressure on in the summer to say, I want a couple of proven Premier League players, Callum Wilson, Fraser. They came in, and other Jeff Hendrick came in, Lewis. So that was good. If he put pressure on for that deal to go through, then fantastic. But he's a dream appointment for Mike Ashley for all those reasons. But one of the other reasons, which I wonder if Mike Ashley likes this about him, Newcastle fans don't like Steve Bruce, and it annoys Newcastle fans that Steve Bruce is in charge of the club. And I think Mike Ashley secretly will enjoy that. Mike Ashley doesn't like Newcastle fans. Newcastle fans don't like him. Mike Ashley is never going to invest in the training ground or the stadium, because from his point of view, why should I spend money on fans who sing names about me every week pre-COVID when we were in the stadium? So I think it's a win-win for Mike Ashley. He'd probably give Steve Bruce a new contract. I'm not even joking. Like, that is literally how pleased he will be with him. And apparently he's been hugely supportive of Bruce when results haven't been going well this season, which has been often. But it's hard work, and Steve Bruce isn't a very popular person among Newcastle fans. In my time supporting the club, I mentioned my first game is in 1993. I don't remember a manager ever having this much apathy towards him. He's really not very liked. But what I will say for Steve Bruce is he is a nice bloke. And I've got a little story actually I wanted to share with you that proves this. So a mate of mine works in the music industry, and he sells merchandise for shall we say, a well-known artist who was scheduled to play at Steve Bruce's daughter's wedding pre-COVID. And this was April last year. COVID had just come in, and we were all stuck in the house, and it was my mate's birthday. So said artist arranged for Steve Bruce and Alan Shearer to come on a Zoom call with a few of us. And I was roped in to do a quiz with Alan Shearer and Steve Bruce and my mate. So I did a mastermind style quiz where I asked Alan Shearer questions about Alan Shearer, and he had to answer them. And Steve Bruce was on the call, and we were having a laugh. And we said, "Look, Steve, if you want to do some questions on Steve Bruce, do you fancy it?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm up for it." And honestly, he was absolutely sound. Great lad, great crack. It was just before the players came back to complete the 2019-20 season. He was quite candid about what was happening, explaining how it was going to work. And the takeover stuff was an absolute crescendo. And he even spoke a little bit about that. He was a lovely bloke. But honestly, he should be nowhere near that football club. He was struggling with Chef Wed when he took over. He must thank his lucky stars every night that he's got an invitation back into the Premier League on big money as well for where he was at the stage of his career. So the golden ticket for him, and I don't blame him at all for grasping it. And, he's a very resilient man because he's put up with a lot this season. The fans are really not happy with him. I'm going to the game tomorrow. We're playing Sheffield United. There's going to be 10,000 fans in there. It's going to be very interesting to see the reaction towards him, because unfortunately, he's saying all the wrong things. He's getting his PR all wrong. The fans are not on side at all. And as soon as it goes bad on the pitch, he's going to hear from them next season when fans hopefully will be back in the stadium. So interesting 6 months ahead, really, for Newcastle and Steve Bruce.
Yeah, interesting and good to hear that he's one of the nice guys from the world of football. Obviously, off the pitch as well, in his personal life, has been through a bit of a hard time as well over the past couple of years. But as you said, in the best interest of the club, it's probably time that somebody else maybe takes the reins sooner rather than later. But on from the manager specifically to a couple of players who I want to ask you about quickly before we move on to a final activity. And one player, in particular, who we'll start with is Alan St. Maximin, who on his day, you'd say Newcastle have one of the most exciting players to watch, even in, world football, you might say. It's probably not since Ben Arfa and before him, another Frenchman, Ginola, that the club have had, an edge of your seat footballer like St. Maximin. And I guess beyond the tricks and flicks, Ketch, just how good is he, and how long can you realistically hope to keep hold of him amidst interest from other big clubs in Europe? I think recently Jose Mourinho at Roma has been circling.
Yeah, big time. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head there with edge of the seat player. He is exactly that. And that is exactly the type of player Newcastle fans love. We are suckers for flair players. So it goes right back to the 50s and 60s. There's a player called Tony Green, whose career was cut short by injury, who was a fantastic, exciting winger. Terry Hibbert was another one. And then you move into the 80s and 90s. Gaza was an unbelievable start of his career there. Didn't see enough of him, unfortunately. And then into the 90s, players like Beardsley, Ginola, who you mentioned. Tino Asprilla is probably one of my favorite players of all time. Totally unpredictable, just fantastic character, love of the game, love of football, tricks, nutmegging people with drag backs on his debut. And then Ben Arfa was the last one we had. Honestly, he was a fantastic player. You couldn't take your eyes off him. And then amazingly, we found Alan St. Maximin. He is a real deal player. He can and will play in the Champions League, in my opinion. And he's just so positive and so energetic and powerful and accurate. And to do that in the team at the minute is unbelievable. The morale of the team is being rock bottom. You've come into a team in February having had long COVID, and the team are completely on their knees in terms of confidence, no wins. And he just comes in and he picks the ball up and he runs and he goes at players and he takes them on and he has fun with it, and he's total energy, and he gets, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but he gets the shit kicked out of him every week, and he gets up and he gets on with it, and he's a fantastic player, and he's also a breath of fresh air off the pitch as well. Only today have we reported on Chronicle Live that he has been awarded the PFA Community Champion of the Year. Off the pitch, he's been working really, really hard with the Newcastle's foundation. He's paid personal visits to the Newcastle United Food Bank to help them put together packages and meet the people who work hard there to literally feed the community of Newcastle in the west end of the city, where there's a lot of poverty. And during lockdown, he was putting his own money into creating care packages for NHS workers. So he was giving out packages with like gift cards and luxury chocolates to all the local NHS workers. And his family, he says a lot of people in his family have a medical background. So the NHS is something that he felt really strongly about. So he took it on his own initiative to do that. And I just love everything about him. I love watching his Instagram stories. He's a huge family man. He lives in Jesmond with all his family, seem to be over there. He's got twin daughters and a young son, and I think his mum and his aunties and everyone lives in this big house in Jesmond, and they've got a big back garden and they're out playing all the time. And he did a thing which I loved last season, which was he did a takeover of 433's Instagram channel, where he did their Instagram stories for a day, and it was like a day in the life of Alan St. Maximin, and it was just brilliant, like from getting up in the morning and having breakfast with his daughters, taking them to nursery, and then he was into training, banter with the lads at training, cool down. Then came back, tried to go to church, and the church was closed, so he was a bit gutted about that. And then he came back into his house. He's in the pool with his kids, and he's playing with his son. Just a great guy. He looks so much fun. I love to hang out with him for a bit. And I absolutely love his banter on social media as well. Do a lot of stuff on social media for Newcastle at the Chronicle, and everything he puts on social media is just bang on. I don't know if he's got a couple of people helping him, but literally sometimes on the whistle, he's in the dressing room, his phone is open, and he's tweeting stuff, messaging fans. Meme game is very strong. Love everything about him. I think we can keep a hold of him for one more season. If we have a season like this next year, he'll be off, no problem, and good luck to him. I don't have any problem with that. The problem I do have is that the money we recoup for him will not be invested in the club, as we've seen. So, yeah, but he hasn't made any noises about wanting to get away at all. He's just like, I love Newcastle, focused on the club, and every time he plays, he delivers. A very exciting player, and I just hope we see more of him next season.
And he does it all in a Gucci headband, nonetheless. It sounds like Clearly, the city of Newcastle has taken to him, and then on the same vein, he's clearly taken to the local area as well. It's good to hear that despite the Gucci reference, he's quite a humble character. But onto one other footballer at Newcastle, although he's not technically a Newcastle United contracted player in the long term. And as an Arsenal fan, I'd have to ask about your thoughts on Joe Willock, a player who has been magnificent in the black and white of Newcastle over this last month in particular. Do you know of any Newcastle plans to try and sign him permanently? And what do you make of Willock's potential?
Well, only today in Steve Bruce's press conference did he say that there will be talks with Arsenal. It just depends on where that falls within Newcastle's budget, which won't be massive at all and might not even exist. And I think every game and every goal he scores, his money goes up, and that's the issue really. He saved Newcastle from relegation, I would say. His injection in at the end of January was kind of came in low key, but it contributed immediately. And he is a guy, I would call him like mini St. Maximin. He's got a lot of what Alan has. So positive, very quick, very direct, knows where the goal is. Just when he's on the pitch, the tempo goes up, there's an outlet, the counter-attack's on, and if he gets a sniff of the ball in the box, it's in. His finishing is immaculate, his technique is brilliant. And another one, just with a great attitude, he's come up, and he could have easily come up and sulked. He's a boyhood Arsenal fan, been in the academy since probably 7-8 years old, and he's been nudged out the team by other players, like Smith Rowe and people who would be coming in younger than him in the academy, which is going to be an ego blow, if he's honest. And he's played quite a bit for Arsenal, but really hasn't had the run that I think that other players might be getting. Odegaard coming in on loan as well would have hurt him, I think. Similar player. So he's had a big, loud message there from Arsenal and Arteta. And he could have come up and sulked and gone through the motions, but he came up here and he went, let me show them. And I thought he would come up, and I didn't have high hopes for him. And I thought he might come up and do a bit, but the way he's come up and embraced it and embraced the love from the fans on social media, and his thing at the minute is he gets a hold of the social media officer's phone at the end of games where he's done well and does a little video message down the phone to the fans on the pitch and calls Newcastle the Maggies rather than the Magpies, which I'm not a big fan of, to be honest. But if Joe wants to call us the Maggies, I'll let Joe call us the Maggies, but no one else can call us the Maggies. That's Joe's thing, because we love him. He's absolutely prolific. Like, he's scored 5 and 5, and I think he started on the bench for 3 of those. So I love everything about him, and everyone is absolutely desperate to keep a hold of him, including Steve Bruce, who's openly said that in press conferences. But it's all about Arsenal. They hold the cards. He is their player. They've developed him. They're going to want minimum 20-30 million for him, and I think that's probably out of Newcastle's price range, a lot of clubs' price range as well, because every club has made a loss in the last 18 months. So it'll be interesting to see. But if he stays at Arsenal, he has to stay and play, because that is a Premier League player there. So he has to go somewhere, and I'd love it to be Newcastle.
Yes, we'll just have to wait and see on the Joe Willock front where he ends up. I mean, if Joe Willock continued to play at Newcastle and kept playing like this, he'd probably be pushing to get in a sort of all-time Newcastle 21st century team. So it's good now that we can, for a final little exercise today, build a 21st century Newcastle United team. And the way it's going to work is Keitel and I are going to read out each position. 4-4-2. We've got a load of players for Ketch to sort of take his pick from. And then, at the end of it, we'll have a Newcastle United team. So I'm going to start by reading the goalkeepers out. And for the goalkeepers, we have Shay Given, Martin Dubravka, Steve Harper, Tim Krul, Carl Darlow, and Rob Elliott.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Who sticks out for you there, Ketch?
Right. I mean, I've dropped a few names already on this podcast, so can I just drop a few more?
Of course, that's what you're here for.
So I'm a big shirt collector, as you know. So I've got some shirts over my shoulder for anyone watching on your YouTube channel, and I've got a signed match-worn Shay Given shirt. I've got a signed match-worn Tim Krul shirt, and Tim's actually someone that I've become friends with over the years, because he lived, when he came over from Holland in the mid-2000s, he lived with the man who became my stepfather in 2010. So Tim Krul's kind of like a family friend. And then, how I mentioned I lived in the same street as Santiago Munez? You won't believe who my next door neighbor is. Rob Elliott. So do you know what? I think I'm going to go. I might have to go Rob Elliott because I see him most mornings taking his kids to school. But he's a really nice guy, and he's underrated. So instead of going for the obvious, which I probably will do in other positions, I'll give it to Rob.
Rob Elliott is, and let's move on to the back four. We've got a bunch of names at right back, starting off with an Arsenal connection. Sad it didn't work out for this guy at my club, but Matthew Debussy would be the first option. We've got Ryan Taylor, Warren Barton, who we've had on the show, Jeremy, Jan Matt, DeAndre Yedlin, Aaron Hughes, Vernon Anita, Habib Bey, Stephen Carr, Danny Simpson, and then last but not least, Andy Griffin. If I've missed anyone, you can throw your own sort of suggestions in there. But who's calling out to you at right back?
The standouts there were Warren Barton and Ryan Taylor. I love Warren Barton because he was signed in that year where we really had to go winning the title and finish second. That summer signed Les Ferdinand, Ginola, and Warren Barton. But then Ryan Taylor over the wall. I was in the away end that day when he scored against Sunderland with a free kick. But I'm gonna go Warren Barton because I love Warren Barton. He always likes my stuff on Twitter. He's very active on Twitter, and I love that about him. I just get a huge buzz out of someone I used to, adore when I was a kid, interacting with me on social media. So let's put Warren in.
Well, we can definitely endorse that pick, given he's been a guest of ours as well. So we've got our right back. We've now got a load of centre back names to throw at you, and we just need you to pick two. Here we go: Fabrizio Colaccini, Stephen Taylor, Federico Fernandez, Nikos Dabizas, Fabian Schär, Kieran Clark, Andy O'Brien, Seb Basson, Titus Bramble, Jonathan Woodgate, Chancellor Mbemba, Mike Williamson, and of course Peter Ramage.
Love it. Okay, so I'm going to drop some more names now. So Stephen Taylor, when I first started playing football, Whitley Bay under nines, Stephen Taylor was a year younger than us, and he played in our team, and we had one substitute, and it was always Stephen Taylor. He never played. He was a striker, and then he went to Crammy Juniors, who was one of Alan Shearer's Sunday clubs when he was a kid, and he got switched to centre back, and the next thing you know, he's captain in England and the under 15s and signing professional deals with Bobby Robson and a Premier League player. So let's have Tails in there. He can go in there. And then I'm going to have alongside him Colaccini, because he honestly is the most intelligent defender I've ever seen play for Newcastle. Just a complete knows what the opposition player is going to do. He didn't always have the physical attributes to, stop opposition players, but in his head, he was one step ahead of every other player on the pitch. So I really like Colaccini. So let's have Colaccini and Tails in there.
Nice. Colaccini, what an icon. What a head of hair. Stephen Taylor, I think, supposedly got into a spat with Cristiano Ronaldo, who called Stephen Taylor shit, and then Stephen Taylor called him ugly, and that really got under Ronaldo's skin, apparently. So, why not have Stephen Taylor in there? Moving on to the left backs. Here's a bunch of names. Olivier Bernard, Jose Enrique, Paul Dummett, the current most long-serving player at the club, Celestine Babayaro, Javier Manquillo, Matt Ritchie, I suppose in the new age of wingbacks, Jetro Willems, who had a short stint but was beloved on the Tyne, and then Jacob Murphy, another wingback, Jack Colback, and Davide Santon.
Yeah. Well, Santon was controversial because he was right-footed and Pardew insisted on playing him at left-back, which was always a bizarre one. For this one, I think Paul Dummett, I think he could be on his way to real cult status. I think he could do his whole career at Newcastle if he's not careful. I know his contract's in balance at there's a bit of a funny one with his contract in that he could trigger an extension or something. I think he will. But someone who just came through from the academy and you thought, this kid's got no chance. And he just proved everyone wrong. And he's a really established, solid Premier League player. Very important, I think, to this team. Cast my mind back to a really important game we won in February against Southampton 3-2. We were down to 10 men, and he just came on and cleared everything with his head, hanging on for dear life. It was a wet Saturday midday kickoff, and Dummett came on. He was colossal in that game, and he just occasionally pops up with these huge performances, and he's a local boy, so let's give that one to Paul.
Paul Dummett, I guess he's Newcastle's answer to sort of Tony Hibbert or something like that. Everton, a bit of a cult hero there. But yeah, let's get a right mid in now. So Alan St. Maximan, who we were speaking about, Atem Ben Arthur, Johan
Killed me. You don't need to say any more names.
Yeah, I know. You're probably sorted. I'll give you the final few just as food for thought. James Milner, Gabriel Obertan, Musa Sissoko, and Darren Ambrose.
Milner, by the way, we should never have sold. Oh my God, that was a killer. I remember Keegan saying it when Kevin Keegan came back as manager his second time, and he said in an interview, I think James Milner can get in the England squad. And a lot of Newcastle fans laughed at that. And he went away to Villa, and I don't think Keegan really wanted to sell him, but I wish we kept a hold of James Milner. Exactly the type of player you need in the dressing room, and things could have been a lot different. But we spoke so highly of him earlier in the episode. It's got to be St. Maximin. And even if he just gives us one more season, if he can just do 38 games for me next season, he can go wherever he wants, and I wish him good luck. And I just enjoy everything about him. His look, the way he looks at life off the pitch and family guy, and it's so exciting to watch. And he's doing this in a very dull team behind him. There's not a lot going for him tactically from the current manager, but he just does his own thing and really excites fans. And he is the PFA Community Champion of the Year, so who better to give it to than ASM?
Yeah, no arguments there. Not that Joe and I have a say in this. This is year 11 Ketch anyway. So moving on to the midfield, and the legend, rest in peace, that is Gary Speed is going to be our first name on the list. After him is Yohan Cabaye, and Alberto Solano, Scott Parker, Kieran Dyer, Jermaine Genus, Rob Lee, who had that disallowed halfway line goal apparently. We've got Kevin Nolan, John Joe Shelby, who's not opposed to taking a shot from halfway. I don't think I've ever seen him score one. Czech Tiote, another one, sadly, rest in peace. We've got Joey Barton, Lee Bowyer, Nicky Butt, Emre, Alan Smith, Mo Diame, and then just why not throw Hugo Viana on that list as well?
Yeah. Amazing names. I think I know the two I'm going to go for, and I can do some more name dropping actually on this. Cabaye, I interviewed at Match of the Day magazine. He was at Palace, and I knew it would be like a good quality interview. Sometimes you do these interviews at Match of the Day and you get like 10 minutes in a room with 10 other people, and it's very rushed and the player's not into it. But this was an interview with his boot sponsor, New Balance, and we knew that brand quite well. Their offices were around the corner from ours in Hammersmith, and it was like they let us set up a room and we had a camera there. And I just thought the first question I'm going to get in is going to be about Newcastle, and he just went on one about how he used to love celebrating in the Gallagher corner, which is, some fans call it the strawberry corner. It's where actually I sit. And he scored an amazing free kick against Man United once and did a little knee slide down in the Gallagher corner. Fond memory. And he said, I always used to run there. I used to love it. And he did it. He said, I miss Newcastle. And at the time, we were obviously struggling to survive. And he said, I hope they stay up and come back. And he did a really nice little video for us. And he was just the coolest kid I've ever met, like unbelievably cool guy. And when he played, he was a proper quarterback player. How we got him for what, 5 million from Lille, who just won League One. Graham Carr's one of his ones, I think, under Pardew. How we got him for that money is unbelievable, and he was fantastic. And again, don't begrudge that move he did to PSG. So I'll have Cabaye in there, and then Gary Speed is a funny one because God rest him, what a player! Fitness level, professionalism, goals, tackling, leadership, everything. Unbelievable. Loved watching him. I remember I went to watch the team train around about 2002. We got snuck they just moved into the new training ground, and I had a shirt which already had some signatures on, and I wanted to get like some of the newer players on the shirt. So I didn't have, for example, Jenis, I didn't have Bellamy, and I didn't have Sir Bobby and Laurent Robert. So I was trying for those players, and Gary Speed, bless him, came up to me and went, "Can I sign your shirt?" And I went, "No, you've no." And I didn't really explain like your signature's already on it. I just kind of said no, thank you. And he just kind of shrugged and laughed and got on the coach, and because they were busting them into the training ground at the time. So it was a bit of a funny incident that I often think about. But love Gary Speed. Him and Cabaye, by the way, would have worked quite nicely together. So let's have them too.
Yeah, it sounds like a good pairing, to be fair. Let's get our final midfielder in the starting lineup. So left midfield, Laurent Robert, Charles Nzogbia, Jonas Gutierrez, Peter Lovenkrands, Christian Atsu, Sylvain Marveau, Damien Duff, and then another one of our former guests, Matty Patterson. We just had to throw him in there.
Yeah, mint. That's class. The obvious one there is Gutierrez. I think he was at the club for a while, but the story of Gutierrez is brilliant. I always got frustrated with Gutierrez. I thought he had more in him. I always used to think you have more assists in you. You should have scored more goals. It took him too long to get the Spider-Man mask out when he eventually did. But he came down with us. We got relegated and he stuck with us and formed an unbelievable partnership down the left-hand side with Enrique. And Enrique went to Liverpool, but Gutierrez stuck with us and then obviously got struck down with cancer, which was unbelievable. And there's just a story of him coming back from that and being able to then play at a Premier League level and then save us from relegation on the final day of the season with goals against West Ham and then running over to the director's box and cupping his ears to Mike and all the lads up in the director's box. Just a fantastic story, and he is an absolute legend on Tyneside. Still playing, by the way. If you follow him on Instagram, he's still doing it somewhere. And just a great guy who just was a bit of like a fish out of water coming to the northeast, but he just embraced it, got on with it, stayed for a long time, and love everything about him. So yeah, got to be him.
Second Argentine in this 11 alongside Colaccini. Moving on to the strikers, and I'll just get the sort of formality out of the way first, although again, this is year 11 Ketch, but we've got Alan Shearer, Demba Ba, Papi Cisse, Andy Carroll, Solomon Rondon, Obafemi Martins, Michael Owen, Alexander Mitrovic, Craig Bellamy, Loic Remy, Callum Wilson, Shola Amiobi, Mark Viduka, Leon Best, Ayoze Perez, Lomana, Trezor, Lua, and Patrick Kluivert. 2 to choose, and if I've missed anyone, throw them in.
Well, yeah, Shearer's got to go in. I mean, he goes in your all-time team, really, doesn't he? So, got to go in.
One more to be his strike partner.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's definitely not Michael Owen. It's definitely not Michael Owen. Who are actually, and one more name drop. I'd interviewed him at Match of the Day, and he said loads of nice things about Newcastle. I loved my time there. I loved it. Oh, it was so great. And then 6 months later was the spat with Shearer that he had famously. So it tells you all you need to know about Michael. I think I might go Wilson for this one because he just gets on with it. I think he's hugely underrated. He's done cruciate in both knees. And he just comes in and gets on with it. He's playing in a team that doesn't press. And we did a story on him earlier in the season where he was in the top 10 for defensive presses in the Premier League, in Europe that was. So what a graft there. And he's playing in a really negative team, I think, that has no possession, and he scored 12 goals in 20 odd games. So Callum and Shearer, that would be pretty decent up front. You think of him as the 21st century Les Ferdinand.
Yeah, you've got 2 kind of natural goal scorers up top. So let's go back through this 11. And in goal, we've got Rob Elliott. At right back, Warren Barton. Centre-back pairing of Fabrizio Colaccini and Stephen Taylor. Paul Dummett is the left back. On the right wing is Alan Saint-Maximin. Centre midfield pairing of Gary Speed and Yohan Cabaye. On the left, Jonas Gutierrez. And then up top, goal-scoring specialist partnership of Alan Shearer and Callum Wilson. Not a bad side at all. Probably be at the very least pushing for European football, all of these guys in their prime. But that's about as much time as we have for today. And I want to say a thanks to my co-host Joe, and then a special thank you from both of us to Matthew Ketchell for joining us. Ketch, we hope that you've enjoyed being our guest. And how can our listeners best follow you and everything that you're getting up to in 2021?
Yeah, give us a follow on Instagram at Ketch Football, Twitter at Ketchell, and give us a go on your podcast platforms. We are at The Shiny Pod, or you can visit our website, searchingforshinies.com, where I've scanned in the entire 1997 Merlin Premier League sticker album. If you can put us in touch with a player from that book, I promise to send you an original sticker from 1997 as a prize. So give us a go on your podcast platform, searching for Shinies, and give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram.
Cheers again, Ketch. It's been a lot of fun on our end of things. If you've enjoyed listening to or watching this podcast, please do subscribe wherever it is that you found us in the first place. On YouTube, you can put some faces to these voices. Just look for United Mates Football Podcast. Please follow us on social media. We're at United Mates FP on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We have a website as well with all of our podcast content, as well as other posts and articles. Check out unitedmatesfp.com. Stay tuned for next week's pod. And until then, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Goodbye.